Welcome to the Triage Method Podcast Q&A edition with myself, Gary McGowan, and my co-host, Mr. Patrick Farrell. This week's question is actually one that we made up ourselves, not going to lie. Okay, I made this question up. And the reason I made this question up is because it's one that comes up a lot of the time in advertisements. And that is something along the lines of, are you tired, bloated, fatigued? Do you have brain fog? Do you find it difficult to concentrate for long periods of time? You might have blank. Basically, that blank there is a placeholder for essentially anything. The reason we're trying to discuss this is because this is one way that, people will start to begin to promote pseudoscientific interventions. And basically, this is a classic trick of charlatans where you basically set your net broad enough that you catch the most amount of people with a list of symptoms, and then you give them a single problem, and hence you also provide them with a solution. So you have a broad net, problems that are likely to be present in a lot of the general population. So I mean, who doesn't feel tired every now and then? Who doesn't struggle to concentrate for long periods of time? These are normal human phenomena. And then you actually say that, okay, this is the problem. So now it's like, oh, thank you. You've actually described for me why I feel that way. And then they sell you the solution. The problem is it doesn't work, and that's why we want to have this conversation, because you could take that word blank and you could fill it with gut dysbiosis. Okay, so you could have gut dysbiosis, and then you could cite some vague evidence related to changes in the gut microbiome and the bacterial environment in the gut. You could say that, oh, look, this seems to be changed in this population. And if you actually listen to our previous podcast on causality and establishing causality, you'd note that trying to say that this is a causal thing and that you can actually change it is really, really difficult. So whether it could be your gut health, it could be the status of a particular vitamin or mineral in the body. Could be what else, Paddy, do people typically use in that little blank thing?
Fucking anything.
Sugar, because you've eaten sugar, or it could be 5G or 4G or Wi-Fi, or basically anything, essentially anything in the environment that is potentially an exposure that a lot of people are going to be exposed to, because these are symptoms that everyone's going to be exposed to. This is a very easy way for charlatans to make a lot of money and to explain problems that aren't even problems. And the reason I think this is a problem and something that I want our listeners to be aware of is not just because you're going to waste your money, because ultimately, like, that's totally your right, and you can spend your money on whatever you want. I don't really care. There is overdiagnosis and over medicalization of everyday life, which is something that we've discussed many times before. Because if you start to basically say that all of these different things are problems, you start to medicalize symptoms of everyday life that are going to be like, it's just everyone is going to experience that. So if I say that tiredness or feeling fatigue, which is ridiculously non-specific, if we say that that is a really prevalent problem and we need to diagnose that and we need to then treat that, then that's something that we basically cast our net over the whole population. And clearly that's something that's probably not great, because you don't want to be told, like, why would I want to think that I actually have some sort of disease or something wrong with me? I don't want to think that. I don't want to think that I've got the problem of fatigue. Instead, it's just like, yeah, I get a bit tired sometimes because I was at work, or because I worked out, or because I didn't sleep great last night. That's not very sexy. Whereas if we can create it into some sort of problem or diagnosis, then people can sell you a solution. And clearly that's in their interests. So you always have to ask yourself, what sort of incentive structure would be in place for someone to come up with this as a label? So if fatigue is a label, why would people be incentivized to come up with that label? And if it's the case that this is a diagnosis that we have a treatment for because we have a supplement, then I would be less inclined to say that that's a company or business or source of information that I'd be likely to trust. Because this is often what happens, where, you go onto a supplement company's website, you read their articles, and when you read their articles, they've got a list of all the different problems, and then all their supplements will be linked. And in some cases that might be really useful. It might be the case that this supplement actually is genuinely useful for this problem, and they've helped you to identify the problem, and boom, sorted. But a lot of the time, when you're talking about these non-specific complaints, like feeling bloated after a meal, all of us feel a bit bloated after a meal, especially if it's a large meal. And, if you were a bit stressed or you didn't sleep well, that sensation might be changed. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have some sort of gastrointestinal disease that requires treatment, just like you don't have some sort of neurological disease if you struggle to concentrate for long periods of time. So that's one of my concerns, is that kind of over medicalization of everyday life through the listing of vague symptoms, and also to some degree, you could say exploitation by trying to sell you solutions for problems that aren't necessarily problems. So if someone's selling you a solution, I would want to know that they didn't also create the problem. What do you think, Paddy? Would you
And this
agree?
is especially true on like social media this day and age anyway, with the whole fitness industry. Like people will literally be like, do you struggle with your mindset? Do you like I can work on that for you. I can really help you build your mindset so that you love your body and all that kind of stuff, right? And like you literally just like you just created a problem and then you just gave the solution. Same with like this bloating stuff. It's like, oh, you have digestive issues. I work with loads of people with digestive issues because they're categorizing digestive issues as a little bit of bloating.
Yeah.
Like I work with all my clients have it and we sort it all out. Like, okay, that's just incorrect. But you'll see people do that where they're just like, oh, digestive issues. I know how to sort all of those out. I help all my clients with that. Or they really struggle with weight loss, and I have this super secret plan that I can use, and I'll achieve the results that you want. They're basically identifying problems that are across the entire population. They're not really problems; they're just an experience of everyday life. Like everyone struggles with weight loss in an environment that is hypercaloric in nature, right? Obviously there are individuals that don't really struggle with weight loss because they are better able to manage their caloric intake and whatever else. But for the vast majority of people, it's like, yeah, okay, like food is nice. So yeah, like we're all struggling here. I'd love to be able to go eat a rack of ribs every single day. But calorically, that's just not going to happen. But yeah, I've nothing really else to add on top of what you said. I'm just naming things that people say because it's actually reckless that people do it. They just name something random that's like, this is a normal human experience and I've got a cure for it. There's literally no difference than these snake oil salesmen that used to go around like fucking West in America, where it's like, oh, you have a fatigue or you have this, take my elixir or take my potion or whatever. It's literally just, it does nothing, or potentially it's even dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like, it's kind of easy to make it sound like these are just quacks. All these people are just quacks. But I mean, what you have to realize is that these incentives are in place in every industry, and it's important to kind of look within as well and say, okay, are we just standing up for people who are the scientific people and we're going against the pseudoscientific people? No, that's not true, because what it also happens, in notoriously in the pharmaceutical industry, there are cases where, pharmaceutical companies, again, it doesn't mean that you label the whole of medicine as bad or drugs as bad, but there are cases where pharmaceutical companies are clearly acting in their own interest, in that they want to find a specific problem and a solution for that problem, and that their study design and the way that they go about their business to develop a drug might actually be based on incentives that we probably shouldn't be rewarding if we wanted people to just purely get the best health, and that was literally all we were looking for. So there are things like that. There are incentives in place in lots of different disciplines, and I think being aware of it just is a good way of living. I mean, it's also something that you see in relation to the kind of psychological aspect of nutrition. I think is notorious for this in some sense, because what you'll have is some people who are involved in psychology side of things, and they'll start to pathologize things that you kind of step back and you're like, I don't know, is this something that is really pathological? So for example, like I'm using the extreme examples because I actually have a lot of respect for a lot of people who do psychology within the sphere of nutrition. It's really important. But there are some examples of people who will take it a step further, and they'll say things like the desire to improve your body or lose body fat, that's something that we need to pathologize. Like that's something that you're actually suffering with. as a result of living in a capitalist society. And it's like, whoa, where'd that come out of? Like, you know, how did you manage to create that? Like, you're giving this person a label now, and you're saying that that is within the framework of disordered eating. So that's something that I kind of get concerned about sometimes when I see that stuff, because I think if you pathologize the fact that people just want to maybe track their nutrition, or people want to, you know, lose a bit of body fat or improve their health or whatever, I think as we begin to pathologize that, I think that's probably not the best approach, because again, we just end up pathologizing everyday life. Now that's absolutely not to say that that there are pathological elements to some of the eating habits that are adopted by people who really want to change their physique, for example. You know, sometimes, especially in bodybuilders, there are clearly elements of how they approach their food that are pathological. And clearly, like, body dysmorphia is something that you should be concerned with in some cases, because you have people who are 7-8% body fat and they think they're fat, and they're like, you know, I need to keep losing weight. So basically my reason for pointing out that kind of example at the extremes is because there's these incentives clearly are wide reaching. So if you were, let's say, a psychologist who's working on disordered eating, and you have a private practice, and you get a lot of people who are, you know, tracking their nutrition or whatever, there's an incentive structure in place there for you to start saying things like, oh, you know, if you're having the desire to lose weight, like, that's not something that's healthy. You should come to me and we'll help you kind of get rid of that. You know, so that's one example, you know. And again, just like we said about the pharmaceutical industry, it doesn't mean that you actually say that all of these things are inherently bad, because, and it's the exact same when it comes to fatigue and tiredness, because someone could say, here are actually 5 tips for improving your sleep if you're struggling with tiredness. Here are some of the symptoms of sleep deprivation. Okay, there's some incentive in place there for them to provide you with the information, because you're on their site and you're going to click, and you might, you know, you scroll on the Triage the Triage website, and you get an ad, and it's like, boom, right? You know, there's some sort of incentive structure in place there for us to get you to the website so that you can click on these different things. And, you know, obviously there's an incentive structure there. But what I would say is that you have to be able to deal with a spectrum here, and that there's a spectrum of people who are, you know, acting within a certain incentive structure to provide you with information and products that are genuinely useful for problems that are clearly very significant in your life. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where the same thing is happening, but it's kind of everyday problems that you may not have thought of as ever being a problem if they had not told you it was a problem. So that, for me, is how I try to differentiate those things. Is, am I just worrying about something now because someone told me that I have to worry about it and now I have to change it? Or am I worrying about something because it's actually something that's really affecting my life and I've actually sought out a solution? Do you think that's a useful way of starting to think about this?
Yeah, 100%. I obviously, to a degree, we're kind of just giving out a bit of marketing. But,
Tear it all down.
awful. But obviously it can be done correctly. And
Yeah,
what
for
I
sure.
mean, like, you're actually selling people stuff that they need. We're not just going into this like consumerism cult, and
Yeah.
we're also not just selling people stuff to take their money and not actually providing something that is of actual true value. You know,
Mm-hmm.
again, you can be like, oh well, they felt like they were getting value, but realistically, like, if you're telling someone that you can cure their digestive issues and you have literally no qualifications to do that, and all your interventions are just not actually curing digestive issues, or you are pathologizing digestive, like normal digestive processes into digestive issues, it's like you're both creating the problem and you're not actually providing a solution to any real problems, you know? Like, it basically is like that, the quackery, you know? Um, and obviously, again, like, there are like hyperbole, there is hyperbole in the any marketing schemes, because, you know, you want to differentiate yourself from the market. You want to be like, well, my thing does 10% better than this other, you know, competitor or whatever. So obviously that is, you know, ever present, but it's not really, we're not really talking about that per se. It's more so people making false claims about normal issues, you know,
Yeah.
like, people get tired when you're walking. Like, okay, well, that's, if I walk for 4 hours, I'm going to get tired, you know?
Yep.
Like, you can't just pathologize normal everyday experiences and then sell a solution. Well, you can, but it is effectively just quackery.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like, really what we're saying is that, like, you have to be able to try to identify when things are not in your interests without just saying, let's tear down the whole system, because neither of us would be in favor of arguing for that. Like, neither of us are going to turn around and say that, all right, pharmaceutical companies, they should actually do everything for free. It's like, well, maybe not. No, it's probably not the best approach. But basically what we're saying is that, these incentives are things that you have to weigh up. Paddy says that in many of the podcasts, when you're starting to talk about anything, ask yourself, what incentives does that put in place? And that's clearly something that's important here. So that's the reason we brought up the general examples that maybe are less clear cut and probably in your interest, or because it would be hypocritical of us as a business that's trying to sell you things to give out about other businesses without recognizing how those incentives also apply to us. So, you can say it's related to business ethics or whatever, but ultimately what we want you to be able to do is to live the highest quality of life that you possibly can. And if someone is beginning to tell you that there are problems with the way that you are living your life, even though you never identified those things as problems before, and you're actually, pretty satisfied with your quality of life, that's when I start to consider those things they're worth bringing to your attention there, because if a pharmaceutical company came out and started telling everyone that they should take 20 different pills because of, let's say, using their phone too often, saying that using your phone is something that's pathology, or using your laptop, or using certain words or something like that, that these things we started to create pathologies out of, that would clearly be a problem. And in this case, in the fitness and health sphere, it really is those typically kind of naturopathic type practitioners or functional medicine people. Like, it's not all of them, but it is a classical thing that they'll basically identify vague problems. That's basically the solution, is to identify fake problems, explain reason for that problem existing, and then create solution to fill that gap. That's the framework that's often used. It's absolutely like so reproducible when if you go onto any website, go onto Mercola or any of those websites, and you'll start to see these things start emerging. If you were to watch Dr. Oz's show, you'd see these things coming up time and time again. The same people coming on with the same problems, fatigue, struggling to lose weight, tiredness, etc. And there's basically 2,000 different solutions for these problems, depending on what company you go to. So yeah.
Also, again, it permeates like completely different industries. Like, again, you can look at industries like, or claims like, would you like to make more money? Who the fuck wouldn't want to make more money?
Of course.
So like, would you like to make more money? Here's my product that'll allow you to do that. Or here's my service that'll allow you to do that. It's like, it's the easiest way to sell things. You just make this claim or problem that everyone either wants or has, and then be like, I have the solution for it. Like, it's ridiculous.
It would actually be pretty easy to do something like for busy executives who travel regularly around different countries. We could actually create a product called the jet lag solution, and it'd just be a little supplement. And what we would do is we'd identify differences in nutrient status between people who do and don't get jet lag, and then we create a supplement for that, the jet lag solution.
And
millions.
You don't even need to actually measure the differences. You just be like, in the clients that I have previously worked with, this is the case. You don't actually ever have to provide information about it.
Might just drop out now, to be honest, and we just work on that. What do you think?
To be honest, I'll probably put this up and we'll probably get hit with a lawsuit because someone will be like, that's actually my solution.
Oh, but anyway, yeah, we don't need to say too much more about this. The only reason we wanted to have this podcast is just to basically just put it out there so that when people, say, hey, I'm feeling tired. I came across this article that said I can fix my tiredness with this supplement, that I can just kind of send them this, because it is pervasive, guys. It is really like, if you, especially in those, whether you might just turn them off, but when you go on certain websites, you'll see down the end of the page or on the sides of the page, you'll see ads being like, are you tired? There's all websites, or there's all advertisements. I was in Dublin train station in Houston last week, and it was an advertisement for like a multivitamin, and it was like, are you feeling tired every day? Beat tiredness with this, and it might actually play a role, it might actually help. But the vast majority of the time when you're reading these things, it's like, yeah, tiredness, fatigue, etc. They're just low barriers of entry that you're going to catch a ridiculous amounts of people. Like, you're not going to put up an ad on, I don't know, bodybuilding.com on the side of the page to say, do you have a blue rash on your left ankle? This could be due to X. Let's take this supplement, because you don't catch many people doing that. You know, that's not a useful way to sell a supplement. So yeah,
They're all
that's
selling
that.
to a captivated audience. Like, again, like you see it on like porn sites and stuff. Like, you know, single girls in your area want to meet you.
You see it on porn site. Have you been on porn sites?
Incorrect. I'm saying
Jesus.
other people see it on porn sites, because I think that is degenerate behavior. But
I agree.
I'm a right-wing extremist apparently. But anyway, you see stuff like that, or like, you know, are you struggling with your confidence? You know, meet single women, or, you know, you grow your penis 12 inches with this one supplement. Like, it's so easy. Like, you could.
Why would you want that?
I know you want a little micro one.
The opposite of what?
But anyway, you know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to sell to a captivated audience. So all you have to do is captivate your audience, and, you know, come to some generalized struggles and some, you know, very ill-defined, you know, this is something that everyone has, but you know who only has the solution? Me.
So what you're saying is we should tear it all down, seize the means of production, and this will all be gone? Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
Done.
Worked there
Let's
previously.
go. It's
Anyway.
worked out really well. Anyway, right, guys, that's enough, because we're actually just going to end up talking about ridiculous stuff. We keep going. This podcast was the Q&A edition, answering your question about fatigue, bloatness, tiredness, etc. And hopefully it gives you some insight into maybe some of the perverse incentives in place when people are trying to sell you things in the health and fitness industry. And hopefully you can start to work around that, and at least just ask yourself the question, is this in my interest? Either having a certain label or a solution for having that particular label. You know, is it in your interest? If not, maybe save your money. If so, by all means, go ahead. So if you're interested in following our work, you can subscribe to the Triage Method newsletter below. You can also join the Triage Method community, which is our free Facebook group. You can also pre-register your interest for the Coaches Corner, which is an upcoming service for personal trainers and interested trainees. And if you'd like to pre-register your interest, there's a link below. You'll be joined to an email list. There's no commitment, nothing involved. You're not going to get 20 emails from us or anything like that, but you will get a significant discount upon launch. So that will be worth your while. We do also have online coaching spaces available. It is, the gyms are now reopened in Ireland. I know that's not the same in all countries, but for Irish listeners, maybe you're getting back in the gym and you want to get on the path, and we do have online coaching spaces available. So feel free to get in touch. And other than that, just subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a like on the podcast, or follow the podcast, or whatever. Share it on your social media. That will be fantastic. Maybe you just think we're idiots and this was a stupid topic. Please share on your social media and say, listen to these boyos, ridiculous. And like the Instagram, like the Facebook, and subscribe to all the YouTube. And that's about everything that you need to do.
100%. I have nothing else to add. So enjoy.